Break from drinking is a way for some to recover after an indulgent holiday season, but for others, it's a chance to reevaluate their relationship with alcohol. Finding out what leads to having a drink is an important part of learning how not to have a drink. That was an important step to sobriety for our next guest, Marcy Hopkins. She shares her story of overcoming addiction and healing from childhood trauma in her memoir, Chaos to Clarity. Good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, thank you so much for sharing your story. So many times people hide in shame when they're dealing with something like this, but this is what helps other people, which is part of your healing, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
7 years sober?
Yes, October 2022.
Okay, so when we look at addiction, you know, there's all kinds of ways that people can get there. Oftentimes it is that childhood trauma. We don't know that right away. The hard thing about alcohol is, like, if you said you had a heroin addiction, we go, whoa, right?
Yeah.
An alcohol addiction, people are familiar with alcohol, so it doesn't seem as threatening. It can be if you're using it for the wrong reasons.
Absolutely, and there is a slippery slope. Yeah.
You had a turbulent childhood.
Yeah.
You grew up around drugs and alcohol, so first off, it's very familiar to you.
Yeah, my mother's an alcoholic, and my father.
And your mom had gone from relationship to relationship, which oftentimes goes hand in hand with an addiction.
Yeah.
And so you didn't have necessarily a stable childhood.
I didn't. It was only with my grandparents that I saw any stability. And my mother had me around men that really changed my life, the treatment that I was given.
Yeah. All right. You started drinking at 12. Do you remember the first time you did it and how that established your future relationship with it?
Well,
and why you did it?
Well, I did it because it was very familiar. My mother always drank around me, and so often, if there was something going on with me, when I visited her from my grandparents, she would, if I had any sort of problem, she would give me a drink. She would say, "Here, take a sip," or whatever the case. So I was
associated early.
I was right, because that was the answer. If you have a problem, here, take a drink. So when my mother got married, I was 12 years old. This was actually her third marriage. I participated in drinking the champagne, and I got drunk, tipsy, and had to be put to bed. But it was an escape, and it was fun. It felt good.
And there were no consequences associated with it. You know, oftentimes people say, I don't have a problem, because they're not dealing with consequences.
Right.
But it was setting the groundwork for it.
Absolutely. And I did use alcohol throughout my life to cope with the trauma. Absolutely.
And you cope with some pretty serious trauma. And I'm not going to push you to go any further than you need to, but it's one of the areas that really, really, you see why somebody wants to self-medicate.
Yeah, it's an escape. You don't have to feel the feelings. And when I put the drink down 7 years ago, that's when I really started my healing journey through the 12-step program. And I will tell you, I was in therapy, and I did all of those steps, but it didn't really help me. I had to really get to the core of my issues, deal with that inner child healing, and move to faith, really. Yeah,
you had a stepdad that seemed like a fairy tale at first, but then things went horribly wrong.
Yeah.
And your mom said to you, I can't afford to leave him. You'll just have to wear more clothes to bed.
When I shared with her the sexual abuse was happening, we were actually on a vacation in Hong Kong, and he had actually did something prior. And it was at that point that I told her what was going on, and she just said, I can't leave, wear more clothes, because I told her that I thought things were happening to me in my sleep. And she just said, wear more clothes.
So now what you have to deal with, or this is what it makes it so problematic, is obviously there's a physical addiction to the alcohol, but then there is that trauma that makes you believe that you are not worthy. And then that anytime something bad happens, you just pack up and move again.
I did, and that's what I did. Absolutely. And I really had no self-worth. I hated myself, and I would always move for a new start, thinking I would find happiness with that new start. But the reality was, it was me. I was always taking myself with me.
Yeah.
So it always, the story repeated.
Yeah, you had a TV career, so things on the outside looking in, things looked great.
It did.
Inside looking out, things were chaotic. You finally got to that healing. You went through Alcoholics Anonymous, as you mentioned. You worked to how to look at yourself and know that you got to love you for all that you are and all that you are not, and you are a lovable, valuable person. Dragonflies are associated with your personal growth, which is why you have that dragonfly.
I do. I love dragonflies. There's just a great God moment where I'd moved into a new home and there were hundreds of dragonflies that surrounded me, and in that moment I knew that my life, that God was there and I was moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and as we started the show with purpose, you have purpose. And you launched your talk show, Wake Up with Marcy.
Yes.
The themes are to erase the stigma behind mental illness and abuse. And I would imagine you find your herd of people who just say thank you. Thank you for allowing us to speak freely and to know that we went through something, but we're not bad people. Something bad happened to us.
Absolutely.
Chaos to Clarity finds purpose in helping others to heal as well. All right, we talked about dry January.
Yeah.
And it's not that you can't drink, but it does help in this kind of beginning of the new year where everyone has their New Year's resolution.
Right.
Ask yourself what your relationship is with alcohol. Do you drink because you really like it? Or are you getting away from something?
Absolutely. And it is a time to reflect. And listen, during the holidays, maybe you've had a lot of drinks, you're participating in all these parties. You just want to give yourself a break and get healthy, right? It helps in so many ways, but it also can help you if you can't stop and you're like, wow, I'm craving alcohol so badly. My life, I'm feeling more anxiety and stress without it. Maybe it's time to look at what your relationship is with alcohol.
Yeah.
And I love that I now, through my story and through my book, can give a lot of ways to get through dealing with any sort of addiction to alcohol, a lot of action items to help people.
Yeah, I have a family member right now who's going through some stuff, and she said, I had to reevaluate my friends. There are some people who are truly friends. We raised our kids together.
Yeah.
There are others I only get with them to drink.
Yes.
And so she has to, kind of reevaluate that situation right there. Okay, so there's all kinds of benefits, obviously health-wise. One of them on there is a lot of people lose weight.
Well, do you know in a glass of wine there's 125 calories? You're basically having a piece of pizza.
Yeah.
Each time you have a glass of wine.
Okay, well, if I look like you in that dress, I might need to stop sipping. No, but thank you so much. Again, as I mentioned, when people come out and own it and say, here it is, and say you can get to the other side, and the other side looks like this, then that's pretty cool. So thank you very much.
It's beautiful.
For more information on Marcy Hopkins or her book, Chaos to Clarity, visit greatdayhouston.com.